A single dad working as a janitor at a shopping mall heard 5 words that changed his life forever. "Please save my mom, mister." What happened next turned an ordinary Tuesday afternoon into a moment of extraordinary courage. 4 armed men. One terrified woman being dragged toward a van. And a janitor who had every reason to look the other way, but chose to run straight into danger instead. He didn't know she was the CEO of a billion-dollar empire. He didn't know her daughter was watching in terror. He only knew that someone needed help, and he was there to give it. Tonight, I'm sharing the incredible story of how one split-second decision transformed 2 lives, created an unbreakable bond, and proved that real heroes don't wear capes. They wear work uniforms and show up when it matters most. Stay with me until the end, and comment below with your city so I can see how far this story reaches around the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The November rain had started just after dawn, and by the time Victor Reynolds clocked in for his shift at North Point Galleria, the parking lot was a maze of puddles reflecting the gray sky above. He pushed his janitorial cart through the service entrance, his shoulders aching from the construction job he'd worked until midnight the night before. The mall wouldn't open for another hour, which gave him time to clean the food court before. The morning rush began. At 36 years old, Victor had learned that complaining changed nothing. Hard work did. Showing up every single day for his 8-year-old son did. So he didn't complain about the double shifts or the exhaustion that had become his constant companion. He just kept moving forward, one floor tile at a time, one paycheck at a time, one day closer to something better. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Joanna Fields, his downstairs neighbor who watched Tyler during his shifts. The message included a photo of his son at the kitchen table, working on his math homework with his tongue sticking out in concentration. Victor smiled despite his fatigue. That little boy was his entire world, the reason he pushed through days. That felt impossible. Tyler had his mother's eyes, bright and curious, always asking questions about everything. But unlike his mother, Tyler had stayed. Rebecca had left when their son was 3, deciding that motherhood wasn't what she wanted after all, that she needed to find herself somewhere far away from the responsibilities she'd created. The divorce papers came by certified mail. The support checks never came at all. So Victor worked. He worked the construction site from 6 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, hauling materials and operating equipment under the supervision of men who were often younger than him, but had the certifications he couldn't afford to get. Then he'd rush home for 2 precious hours with Tyler, helping with homework, making dinner, listening to stories about school and friends and why vegetables were gross. At 5:30, Joanna would arrive and Victor would change into his janitorial uniform for his second job at North Point Galleria, cleaning and maintaining the massive shopping complex until closing time at 10. It was brutal. It was exhausting. But every time Tyler wrapped those skinny arms around his neck and said, "Love you, Dad," Victor knew it was worth it. Every single sleepless hour was worth it. The mall was quiet in these early morning hours before the stores opened. Victor moved through the food court methodically, wiping down tables, emptying trash bins, mopping the tile floors until they gleamed under the fluorescent lights. He'd been doing this job for 2 years now, and he knew every corner of this place. The North Point Galleria was one of the largest malls in the state. 3 stories of retail shops, restaurants, a movie theater, and an indoor play area that Tyler loved visiting on Victor's days off. His supervisor, Mr. Holloway, was a decent enough man who didn't micromanage and appreciated that Victor showed up on time and did quality work. The pay was minimum wage, but it was steady, and in Victor's world, steady mattered more than generous. He checked his phone again. 7:15. The mall would open at 8. He needed to finish the food court and then move to the main concourse on the second level. His back protested as he bent to pick up a discarded cup someone had left behind. A reminder that he wasn't as young as he used to be. That working two physical jobs was taking its toll. Sometimes, late at night when he couldn't sleep, Victor would do the math. If he could just get one good-paying job instead of two minimum-wage ones, he could actually spend evenings with Tyler, maybe even afford to take him to the movies, or out for pizza without calculating every dollar. But good jobs required degrees or certifications or connections he didn't have. So he stayed on the treadmill, running as fast as he could just to stay in place. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a reminder about Tyler's upcoming parent-teacher conference. Victor added it to his mental calendar, already trying to figure out which shift he could adjust to make the meeting. Being a single parent meant being everything at once: provider, caretaker, homework helper, emotional support, and somehow also finding time to sleep and eat and maintain some basic level of sanity. The janitorial cart's wheel squeaked as he pushed it toward the supply closet. He made a mental note to oil it later. Small details mattered in a job like this. Do quality work, stay reliable, keep your head down, and hope that maybe someday something better would come along. Victor had been hoping for someday for 3 years now, ever since Rebecca left. He'd been telling himself that better days were coming, that if he just kept pushing and grinding and working, eventually things would improve. But some days, like today with the rain coming down and his back aching and another 12-hour workday ahead of him, someday felt very far away. He finished the food court and moved to the main concourse, where the anchor department stores bookended a long corridor of smaller shops. The tile here was white marble, expensive and requiring careful maintenance. Victor moved slowly, making sure not to leave streaks, not to miss any spots. Pride in his work was one of the few things he had control over. Through the massive skylights above, he could see the gray November sky, clouds heavy with rain. It matched his mood, though he tried not to dwell on it. Negativity changed nothing. Action did. His radio crackled. All staff were opening the east entrance early for a private event. CEO and her team arriving at 7:30. Make sure that area is pristine. Victor adjusted his route, heading toward the east entrance near the luxury wing of the mall. Private events weren't uncommon here. North Point Galleria catered to wealthy clientele, hosting everything from exclusive shopping experiences to charity functions. Victor had cleaned up after enough of them to know that rich people made just as much mess as everyone else. They just did it with more expensive trash. The east entrance was already pristine from his earlier pass, but he did a final check, making sure everything was perfect. Through the glass doors, he could see a black luxury sedan pulling up to the curb. A woman in an elegant business suit emerged, followed by a young girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, wearing a school uniform and carrying a backpack. Victor turned away, focusing on his work. Their world and his world didn't intersect. They walked through spaces he cleaned, lived lives he could barely imagine, occupied a sphere of wealth and privilege that felt as distant as another planet. He moved his cart toward the service corridor, ready to tackle the restrooms on the second level. Just another Tuesday morning. Just another shift in a life built on double shifts and determination, and the quiet hope that someday, somehow things would get better. Victor Reynolds had no idea that in less than 10 minutes, his entire life was about to change forever. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. ****. The screaming started at 7:40-3. Victor was near the second level railing, wiping down the brass fixtures that overlooked the main concourse below when he heard it. A woman's voice, sharp with terror, cut through the quiet mall like breaking glass. His head snapped up, instincts immediately alert. Below him, near the east entrance, chaos was unfolding. 4 men in dark clothing and ski masks had appeared seemingly from nowhere. They moved with military precision, 2 grabbing the woman in the business suit he'd seen arrive minutes earlier, while the other 2 blocked escape routes and scanned for witnesses. The woman was fighting, twisting in their grip, her briefcase falling to the marble floor with a loud crack. But it was the young girl that made Victor's blood run cold. She stood frozen a few feet away, her backpack sliding off her shoulder, her face white with shock and terror. One of the masked men started moving toward her, clearly intending to grab her too. That's when the girl's eyes found Victor on the second level. Their gazes locked across the distance, and he saw the pure desperation in her expression. "Please, save my mom, mister." Her voice rang out, high and terrified and pleading. "Please." Time seemed to slow. Victor's rational mind screamed that this was insane, that he should hit the emergency alarm and let security handle it, that he was a janitor with no training and no weapons and a son who needed him alive. These men were clearly professionals. This was dangerous. This was not his problem. But the girl's voice echoed in his head. "Please save my mom." Victor didn't remember making the decision. His body just moved. He vaulted over the railing's side access gate and hit the escalator, taking the moving stairs 3 at a time in a controlled fall more than a run. His boots hammered against the metal steps as he descended, his heart exploding in his chest, adrenaline flooding his system. The masked men had the woman halfway to the exit now. She was still fighting, her expensive heels skidding on the marble, her voice hoarse from screaming. The girl had started to run toward them, and one of the kidnappers reached out to grab her with a gloved hand. "Let them go." Victor's voice tore from his throat, raw and commanding. All 4 men turned to look at him. For a split second, nobody moved. Then everything erupted into violence. The nearest kidnapper, a massive man easily 6'4", released the woman's arm and charged at Victor. He was fast despite his size, closing the distance in seconds. Victor barely had time to brace himself before the impact came. They collided like freight trains. Victor felt the air explode from his lungs as the man's shoulder drove into his chest. Pain radiated through his ribs, but he wrapped his arms around the kidnapper's midsection and used the man's own momentum against him, twisting and throwing him into a nearby planter with enough force to crack the concrete base. But there were 3 more. The second kidnapper came at him from the left, throwing a punch that Victor only partially blocked. Knuckles grazed his cheekbone, sending stars across his vision. He stumbled backward, his janitorial training entirely useless against trained fighters, yet Victor had grown up in rough neighborhoods. He'd been in fights before, back when he was younger and angrier at a world that seemed determined to keep him down. He knew that the moment you showed weakness, the moment you backed down, you lost. So instead of retreating, he stepped forward into the attack. His right hand shot out, grabbing the second kidnapper's wrist mid-punch, and his left fist came up in a tight, brutal arc, catching the man square in the throat. The kidnapper gagged and staggered back, gasping for air. Victor's victory lasted exactly 2 seconds. The third kidnapper hit him from behind, an arm wrapping around his throat in a chokehold. Victor's vision immediately started to dim as his air supply was cut off. He threw his head backward, connecting with something that crunched, probably the man's nose. The grip loosened slightly. Using the momentary advantage, Victor drove his elbow back into the kidnapper's ribs once, twice, 3 times, until the chokehold broke completely. He spun around, breathing hard, and faced his attacker. That's when he saw the knife. The 4th kidnapper, who'd been holding the woman with his partner, had drawn a blade from his belt. It was military grade, serrated, designed to cause maximum damage. The man moved forward with the confidence of someone who knew how to use it. "Should have minded your own business," the man said, his voice muffled by the mask. Victor's eyes flicked to the woman and the girl. They'd stumbled away from the chaos and were pressed against a storefront window, the mother's arms wrapped protectively around her daughter. Both were watching him with expressions of terror and desperate hope. The knife-wielding kidnapper lunged. Victor moved on pure instinct, throwing up his left arm to block. The blade cut through his uniform sleeve and into his forearm, a line of white-hot fire that made him gasp. Blood immediately soaked through the fabric, hot and sticky. But Victor had been hurt before. Pain was familiar. He'd worked through injured shoulders and twisted ankles and exhaustion so deep it felt like dying. This was just more pain, and pain could be endured. He grabbed the kidnapper's wrist with his right hand, the one that wasn't bleeding, and twisted hard. The knife clattered to the marble floor. Before the man could recover, Victor drove his knee up into the kidnapper's midsection with everything he had. The man doubled over, and Victor brought both fists down on the back of his neck, dropping him to the ground. But the first kidnapper, the massive one he'd thrown into the planter, was back on his feet. And he looked furious. Victor turned just in time to see the punch coming. He tried to dodge, but he was too slow, too tired, too hurt. The fist connected with his jaw like a sledgehammer, and Victor went down hard on the marble floor. His vision swam, his ears rang. Blood from his arm was pooling beneath him, mixing with the cleaning solution that had spilled from his overturned cart. The kidnapper stood over him, raising his boot for what would probably be a finishing blow to Victor's head. Then the siren started wailing. Someone had triggered the mall's emergency alarm system. Red lights flashed from every corner. The security gates began descending with mechanical precision. "We're out," one of the kidnappers shouted. "Move now." The massive man hesitated, looking between Victor on the ground and the exit that was rapidly being sealed off. Then he turned and ran, joining his three companions as they sprinted toward a service exit that hadn't yet been locked down. Victor tried to push himself up, tried to go after them, but his arms gave out. He collapsed back to the floor, breathing hard, tasting blood in his mouth. Then there were hands on him. Gentle hands. "Don't move," a woman's voice said. "You're hurt. Just stay still." Victor's vision slowly cleared. The woman in the business suit was kneeling beside him, her hands pressing something against his bleeding arm. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled from the struggle, but her eyes were fierce and focused. Behind her, the young girl stood watching, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us," the woman said, her voice shaking. "You saved my daughter. You saved me." Victor tried to speak, but his jaw hurt too much. He managed a small nod. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the mall. Security guards appeared from multiple directions, followed by what looked like private security personnel in dark suits. They swarmed the area, checking exits, securing the perimeter. One of them, a man with salt and pepper hair and the bearing of former law enforcement, dropped to his knees beside the woman. "Miss Caldwell, are you injured? Is Brooke hurt?" "We're fine, Damon. This man saved us." She looked down at Victor with an expression he couldn't quite read. He fought 4 armed men. "He's badly hurt." More sirens approached from outside. Real sirens this time, police and ambulances. Victor's head was spinning. "Miss Caldwell?" The security guard had called her Miss Caldwell. Why did that name sound familiar? "Sir, stay with me." A paramedic appeared in his field of vision, young and competent looking. "What's your name?" "Victor," he managed through his swollen jaw. "Victor Reynolds." "Okay, Victor, you're going to be fine. We're going to get you to a hospital and get you checked out. You've got a significant laceration on your arm and possible jaw fracture, but you're going to be okay." As they loaded him onto a stretcher, Victor's eyes found the young girl again. Brooke, the security guard, had called her. She was clinging to her mother, both of them wrapped in emergency blankets now, both watching him with identical expressions of gratitude and concern. The last thing Victor heard before they carried him out of the mall was the girl's small voice. "Thank you, mister. Thank you for saving my mom." The emergency room at Willowbrook Medical Center was controlled chaos. Victor sat on an examination table while a doctor stitched his forearm, the local anesthetic making the procedure bearable but not eliminating the deep ache that had settled into his bones. His jaw had been x-rayed and determined to be badly bruised but not broken. His ribs were similarly bruised. His entire body felt like it had been through a demolition derby, but he was alive. And more importantly, that woman and her daughter were alive. A police detective had been waiting to speak with him, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Detective Holloway. She'd taken his statement while the doctor worked, her questions precise and thorough. What did the men look like? What did they say? Any distinguishing features, vehicle descriptions, anything at all. Victor answered as best he could, but the truth was it had all happened so fast. Masked men, dark clothing, professional movements. The knife, the fear in that little girl's eyes. "You did good, Mr. Reynolds," Detective Holloway finally said, closing her notebook. "Real good. Most people would have frozen or run the other way. You probably saved Miss Caldwell's life today." "Miss Caldwell," Victor repeated, the name still nagging at him. "Who is she?" The detective's eyebrows rose. "You don't know?" "That's Marissa Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Industries. One of the wealthiest women in the country. Her company owns like half the commercial real estate in this state." Victor felt something cold settle in his stomach. Of course she was rich. Of course she was important. Of course she was someone who mattered in the eyes of the world. And he was what? A janitor who could barely make rent. A single dad who bought store brand everything and drove a car held together with duct tape and hope. Two different worlds that should never have collided. But they had. For just a few violent, terrifying minutes, their worlds had crashed together. And Victor had done the only thing he knew how to do. Protect someone who needed protecting. "Mr. Reynolds?" A nurse appeared at the door. "There are some people here to see you. They say it's important." "I need to call my neighbor," Victor said, suddenly panicking. "My son, I need to let Joanna know I'm okay. She's going to see this on the news and worry. "Of course, use the phone here." The nurse gestured to the bedside unit. "Take your time." Victor called Joanna with shaking hands. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with concern. "Victor, oh my God, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "They said a janitor fought off kidnappers at the mall." "I'm okay, Joanna. Banged up, but okay. Is Tyler with you?" "He's at school." "I haven't told him anything." "I thought you should be the one to explain." Her voice softened. "What you did was incredibly brave, Victor. Incredibly stupid, but incredibly brave." Despite everything, Victor smiled. "Yeah, probably both." "Can you keep Tyler after school?" "I'm not sure when I'll be released." "From the hospital?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. We'll be fine." After he hung up, the nurse returned. "They're still waiting on Miss Caldwell and her security team. Should I send them in?" Victor looked down at himself. His janitorial uniform was torn and blood-stained. His arm was bandaged from wrist to elbow. His jaw was swollen and turning purple. He looked like he'd lost a fight with a bear, but he nodded. "Yeah, send them in." Marissa Caldwell entered the room like she owned it, which Victor reflected she probably did. Own the hospital, that is. She was still in her business suit, though it was rumpled and stained now. Her dark hair was pulled back, and there was a small bandage on her temple that hadn't been there before. The young girl, Brooke, held her hand tightly. Behind them came the security guard from earlier, Damon, and two other men in dark suits who radiated professional protection. Marissa's eyes found Victor's, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she crossed the room and did something that shocked him completely. She took his unbandaged hand in both of hers. "Mr. Reynolds," her voice was steady but full of emotion. "I don't even know how to begin thanking you. What you did today, Fighting those men, risking your life for complete strangers. I'm told that's not something most people would do. I just did what anyone would do, Victor said, the words automatic. No. Her grip on his hand tightened. That's what everyone says, but it's not true. Most people would have called security and stayed out of it. You ran toward danger. You took on 4 armed men with nothing but your bare hands. You got hurt protecting people you didn't even know. Brooke stepped forward, her eyes red from crying. You saved my mom. When I asked you to help, you came. Nobody else helped, but you did. Victor felt his throat tighten. Looking at this young girl, he saw Tyler, saw every scared little kid who needed an adult to step up and be brave. I couldn't let them hurt your mom, sweetheart. Not when I could do something about it. Marissa's composure cracked slightly. The police told me those men were professionals. Hired kidnappers. This was planned, coordinated. They were going to take me, probably for ransom, possibly worse. And if you hadn't intervened, they would have succeeded. She paused, seeming to gather herself. I'm told you work at the mall, as a janitor. Yes, ma'am, 2 years now, and you have a son. Tyler. He's 8. Is he okay? Does he know what happened? He's at school. My neighbor's going to pick him up. I haven't told him yet. Victor shifted on the examination table, wincing as his ribs protested. I should probably get back to work once they release me. I've already missed half my shift. Marissa stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Mr. Reynolds, you're not going back to work today. You're injured. You need rest. I need my paycheck, ma'am. I've got rent due and Tyler needs new shoes, and I can't afford to miss shifts. The words came out harsher than he intended, frustration bleeding through. I appreciate what you're saying, but I live in the real world where missing work means bills don't get paid. Something shifted in Marissa's expression. Understanding maybe, or recognition. How much do you make at the mall? Victor hesitated. That's personal, humor me. Minimum wage. $12.50 an hour, 40 hours a week when they give me full time. And you have another job. Construction. 6 to 3, then the mall from 5:30 to 10. He met her eyes directly. I work hard, Miss Caldwell. I show up, I do quality work, and I take care of my son. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. I never suggested otherwise. Marissa released his hand and stepped back slightly. Mr. Reynolds, I want to help you. What you did today deserves more than just a thank you. Let me do something meaningful to show my gratitude. You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad you and your daughter are safe. Damon, the security guard, spoke up from his position by the door. Sir, with all respect, you should listen to what Ms. Caldwell has to say. She doesn't make offers lightly. Victor looked between them, seeing something in their expressions he couldn't quite name. This felt like more than just gratitude. This felt like something bigger was coming, something that would change everything. And part of him wanted to say no, wanted to walk away and return to his simple life of double shifts and struggle, because at least that life made sense. At least. In that life he knew the rules, but another part of him, the part that was tired and hurt and worried about how he'd pay for this hospital visit, wanted to hear what she had to say. Okay, Victor said finally. I'm listening. Marissa Caldwell pulled a leather chair closer to Victor's hospital bed and sat down with the kind of deliberate grace that spoke of boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations. Brooke remained standing beside her mother, her small hand resting on Marissa's shoulder. Mr. Reynolds, Marissa began, her voice measured and clear. I've spent the last 20 years building Caldwell Industries from the ground up. I started with nothing but a business plan and a loan I could barely afford. I worked 80-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, missed birthdays and holidays, all in pursuit of success. And I achieved it. My company is worth $3 billion. I employ over 15,000 people. I've built something that matters. She paused, and Victor saw something vulnerable flash across her face. But today, 4 men tried to take everything from me. Not my company or my money. They tried to take me from my daughter. They tried to take her mother away. And in that moment, all the wealth and power and success meant absolutely nothing. I was helpless, terrified, and convinced I was about to lose everything that actually mattered. Brooke's hand tightened on her mother's shoulder. Then you appeared, Marissa continued. A man I'd never met. A janitor making minimum wage who had every rational reason to stay out of it. But you didn't. You ran toward danger. You fought armed professionals. You bled protecting strangers. And you did it because it was right. Victor shifted uncomfortably. Miss Caldwell, I appreciate the kind words, but I'm not finished. Her tone was gentle but firm. What you did today reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That real strength isn't measured in bank accounts or corporate titles. It's measured in character, in courage, in the willingness to sacrifice for others, even when it costs you everything. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, setting it on the table beside Victor's bed. I want to offer you a job, Mr. Reynolds, not as a thank you gift or charity, as recognition of the kind of person you are and the value you bring. I'm launching a new division of Caldwell Industries focused on community safety and corporate responsibility. I need someone to head it. Someone who understands what it means to protect people, not because it's profitable, but because it's right. Victor stared at the folder like it might explode. You want me to run a division of your company? Ms. Caldwell, I clean floors. I don't have a business degree or management experience or any of the qualifications someone like that would need. You have something more important. You have integrity. Marissa opened the folder, revealing a formal contract. The position is Director of Community Safety Initiatives. The salary is $175,000 per year, plus full benefits. Health insurance for you and Tyler Company. Vehicle, paid vacation, retirement contributions, and a signing bonus of $50,000. The numbers hit Victor like a physical blow. $175,000. That was more than he made at both jobs combined, times 3. That was life-changing money. That was a different existence entirely. This can't be real, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's very real. Open to page 3. Victor's hands shook as he turned the pages. There it was, in black and white. The salary, the benefits, the job description. All of it legitimate and official and completely impossible. Why? The question came out raw and desperate. Why would you do this? You don't know me. You don't know if I can handle this kind of responsibility. I'm nobody, Ms. Caldwell. I'm just a guy who shows up and does the work. You're exactly the person I need. Marissa leaned forward, her eyes intense. I've interviewed dozens of candidates for executive positions over the years. People with impressive resumes and fancy degrees and all the right credentials. But most of them see everything as a transaction. They calculate risk and reward. They make decisions based on what benefits them most. She gestured toward the folder. You didn't calculate anything today. You saw people in danger and you helped. That's instinct. That's character. And that's something I can't teach or train. Everything else, the management skills, the corporate knowledge, the strategic planning, those can be learned. I'll provide you with training, mentorship, whatever support you need. But I can't teach someone to be brave. You either are or you aren't. Or you aren't. Victor looked down at the contract, then up at Marissa, then over at Brooke, who was watching him with hopeful eyes. What would I actually do, he asked. In this job, I mean. What would my responsibilities be? You'd oversee our corporate safety programs, work with communities to implement security measures, partner with local organizations to address crime and safety concerns, and manage a team dedicated to making the areas where we operate safer for everyone. Marissa's voice grew more animated as she described the role. Caldwell Industries owns commercial properties in 43 cities. We have the resources and the reach to make real change. But we need someone who genuinely cares about people, not just profit margins. I have Tyler to think about, Victor. Syed, I'm a single parent. I can't take a job that's going to have me traveling constantly or working 100-hour weeks. He comes first, always. I understand completely. The position offers flexible hours and most of your work can be done from our local office. When travel is necessary, we'll make sure it's scheduled around Tyler's needs. We can even arrange childcare assistance if that would help. Marissa's expression softened. I'm a single parent too, Mr. Reynolds. Brooke's father passed away when she was 2. I know what it's like to balance work and parenting. I would never ask you to choose between your son and this opportunity. Victor's mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. He was supposed to keep grinding away at his 2 jobs, hoping for small improvements, celebrating tiny victories like being able to afford name brand cereal or Tyler's class field trip. Can I think about it? He asked. This is overwhelming. It's too much to process right now. Of course. Take all the time you need. Marissa stood, smoothing her suit. But I want you to know something. Victor, may I call you Victor? He nodded. I almost died today. Those men were going to take me, and there's no telling what would have happened next. Ransom, murder, who knows? And my daughter would have either been taken with me or left motherless. Her voice cracked slightly. You prevented that. You gave me my life back. You gave Brooke her mother back. There's no amount of money that can repay that debt, but I can at least try to give you something meaningful, a chance at a better life, a future where you don't have to work yourself to death, just to survive. She placed a business card on top of the folder. That's my personal cell phone. Call me when you've made a decision. And Victor, whatever you decide about the job, I want you to know that you're a hero. Not because you fought those men, but because you're the kind of person who steps up when others need help. The world needs more people like you. Brooke stepped forward and before Victor could react, wrapped her arms around him in a gentle hug, careful not to bump his injured arm. Thank you for saving my mommy, she whispered. You're the bravest person I ever met. Victor's throat tightened with emotion. He thought about Tyler, about what he'd want someone to do if his son were in danger. You're very welcome, sweetheart. I'm just glad you're both safe. After they left, accompanied by Damon and the security team, Victor sat alone in the hospital room staring at the folder. The contract seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights, promising a future he'd never dared to imagine. His phone buzzed. A text from Joanna. Tyler knows something happened. He saw it on the news at school. He's worried about you. When can he see you? Victor typed back. Tell him I'm okay and I'll be home soon. We'll talk about everything tonight. Home. They're small. Apartment in a building where the elevator only worked half the time and the walls were so thin you could hear the neighbors arguing. Where Tyler shared a bedroom with storage boxes because they couldn't afford a 2-bedroom place. Where Victor counted pennies to make sure they had enough for groceries each week. This job could change all of that. Tyler could have his own room. They could live somewhere safe and clean. Victor could actually spend evenings with his son instead of rushing off to a second shift. They could go on vacation, something they'd never been able to afford. Tyler could have new clothes instead of thrift store hand-me-downs. They could have a life instead of just survival. But what if he failed? What if he took this job and couldn't handle it? What if Marissa realized she'd made a mistake hiring someone without proper qualifications? What if he embarrassed himself and let her down and ended up unemployed with nothing to fall back on? The fear was real and paralyzing. Victor picked up his phone and called the one person whose opinion he trusted completely. Joanna answered immediately. How are you feeling? Do you need me to bring you anything? "I need advice," Victor said. "Something happened, something big. And I don't know what to do." He told her everything. The job offer, the salary, the benefits, the opportunity to completely transform his and Tyler's life. And his fear that he wasn't good enough, that he'd fail, that accepting this gift would somehow end in disaster. Joanna was quiet for a long moment after he finished. Then she said, "Victor, do you remember when Rebecca left?" "Of course. Do you remember what you told me when I offered to help with Tyler? You said you couldn't accept charity, that you needed to handle things yourself, that accepting help felt like admitting you couldn't take care of your own son." Victor winced at the memory. "I remember. And I told you that accepting help when you need it isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that none of us can do everything alone." Her voice was gentle but firm. "This isn't charity, Victor. This is a woman recognizing your value and offering you an opportunity you've earned through your character and courage. You saved her life. You fought 4 armed men. You proved exactly the kind of person you are. So the question isn't whether you deserve this. The question is whether you're brave enough to accept it. What if I fail? What if you succeed? What if you're exactly what she needs and you build something incredible? What if you give Tyler the future he deserves?" Joanna paused. "You've spent 3 years being brave enough to work 2 jobs and raise that boy alone. I think you can be brave enough to say yes to something good finally coming your way." After they hung up, Victor sat with the contract in his hands. He thought about his father, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide for his family. Who'd told Victor that you measure a person by what they do when someone needs help, not by what they have in their bank account. His father would have been proud of what Victor did today. And he'd be proud of Victor accepting this opportunity to build something better. Victor picked up the business card Marissa had left and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Reynolds?" "Victor," he corrected. "If we're going to work together, you should call me Victor." There was a pause, then he heard the smile in her voice. "Does that mean you're accepting the position?" "Yes. I don't know if I'll be any good at it, and I'm probably going to need a lot of help. But I'm accepting. When do I start?" "How about Monday? That gives you the rest of the week to recover from your injuries and spend time with Tyler. We can handle all the paperwork and orientation next week. Monday works." Victor felt something unfamiliar spreading through his chest. Hope. Real, tangible hope for the first time in years. "And Miss Caldwell, Marissa, thank you for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. Thank you for being the kind of person worth believing in. I'll see you Monday, Victor. Get some rest." Monday morning arrived with autumn sunshine that made the city look golden and full of promise. Victor stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 4th time. He'd bought it on Saturday at a department store, along with 3 dress shirts and 2 pairs of slacks. The clothes had cost more than he usually spent in 2 months, but Marissa had insisted the signing bonus was specifically meant to help him prepare for his new role. The tie still didn't look right. Victor had watched 3 different YouTube videos on how to tie a Windsor knot, but his fingers felt clumsy and uncertain. Behind him, reflected in the mirror, he could see Tyler sitting on the toilet lid, watching with curious eyes. "You look fancy, Dad," Tyler said. His son wore his regular school clothes, jeans, and a dinosaur t-shirt, but his hair was combed neatly, like a businessman on TV. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume," Victor admitted, finally getting the tie into something resembling the right shape. "Like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. But you are someone important now. You saved that lady and her daughter. You're a hero, and now you have a hero job." Victor turned to face his son, crouching down to Tyler's level despite the protest. From his still healing ribs, "Buddy, I want you to understand something. This new job doesn't make me more important than I was before. I'm still the same dad who makes you eat vegetables and helps with homework and tucks you in at night. The Only difference is I won't have to work 2 jobs anymore. I'll be home with you more." Tyler threw his arms around Victor's neck. "I like that difference." They'd had a long conversation over the weekend about the changes coming. Victor had been honest with Tyler about the kidnapping, explaining what happened in age-appropriate terms. Tyler had been scared at first, worried that the bad men might come back, but Victor had assured him that the police were handling it, and they were safe. Then he'd told Tyler about the job offer and what it meant for their future. Tyler's eyes had gone wide when Victor mentioned they could move to a better apartment, maybe even a house with a yard. "Can we get a dog?" Tyler had asked immediately. "Maybe." Victor had replied, "Let's take things one step at a time." Now standing in their cramped bathroom in the apartment they'd called home for 2 years, Victor felt the weight of what he was about to do. Today he'd walk into Caldwell Industries as an executive. He'd have an office and a staff and responsibilities that terrified him. He'd be surrounded by people with degrees and experience and all the qualifications he lacked, but he'd also have a chance to build something meaningful, to help communities become safer, to use the resources of a billion-dollar company to actually make people's lives better. "You ready?" Joanna's voice called from the living room. She'd agreed to take Tyler to school so Victor could head straight to his first day. "Ready as I'll ever be," Victor called back. He drove to Caldwell Tower in the modest sedan Marissa had arranged for him, a company car that was 5 years newer than anything he'd ever owned. The building rose from the downtown skyline like a monument to success. 40 stories of glass and steel that reflected the morning sun in brilliant shards of light. Victor parked in the underground garage, in a spot marked with his name. Director V. Reynolds. Seeing it made his stomach flutter with nervous energy. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt like ascending into another atmosphere. The doors opened onto a reception area that screamed wealth and power. Marble floors, modern art installations, a reception desk made of what looked like actual mahogany. "Mr. Reynolds?" A woman in her 50s approached with a warm smile. She had silver hair pulled back in a professional bun and kind eyes. "I'm Laurel Hastings, Miss Caldwell's executive assistant. Welcome to Caldwell Industries." Her handshake was firm and genuine. "Miss Caldwell is finishing a conference call, but she asked me to show you around first. Your office is this way." Laurel led him through corridors that felt more like an upscale hotel than an office building. They passed conference rooms and break areas and offices occupied by people who looked far more qualified than Victor felt. "This will be your space," Laurel said, opening a door near the end of the hallway. Victor stepped inside and felt his breath catch. The office wasn't huge, but it was bigger than his and Tyler's bedroom combined. Windows overlooked the city, offering a view that stretched for miles. A desk made of dark wood sat in the center, with a leather chair behind it and a computer already set up. Bookshelves lined one wall, empty and waiting to be filled. On the desk sat a welcome basket and a card that read, "Welcome to the team. You're going to do amazing things. Marissa and Brooke. IT will be by this afternoon to help you set up your accounts and access," Laurel said. "You have a meeting with Miss Caldwell at 10, then lunch with the department heads at noon. And at 2, you'll meet with the advisory board for the Community Safety Initiative. I've sent your calendar to your phone." Victor's head was spinning. Advisory board? The initiative already has an advisory board? "Miss Caldwell doesn't do anything halfway, Mr. Reynolds. When she decides something matters, she moves quickly." Laurel's expression softened. "I know this is overwhelming, but you're here because she believes in you. That's not something she gives lightly. Trust her judgment even if you don't trust your own yet." After Laurel left, Victor stood in the center of his new office, slowly turning to take it all in. Through the window, he could see the entire city spread out below. The neighborhoods where he'd grown up, the construction sites where he'd worked, The streets he'd driven when he couldn't afford enough gas to get where he was going. All of it. Visible from up here, but distant. Separate. His phone buzzed with a text from Joanna. Tyler made it to school safely. He told his whole class his dad is a superhero with an office in the sky. You've got this, Victor. Believe in yourself. Victor spent the next hour exploring his computer, reading through files Marissa had prepared about the Community Safety Initiative. The scope was impressive and intimidating. Partnerships with police departments, funding for neighborhood programs, grants for community watch groups, training initiatives for security personnel. It was ambitious and meaningful, and exactly the kind of work that could actually make a difference. It was also terrifying in its scope. How was he supposed to manage all of this? At 10 o'clock sharp, Laurel appeared at his door. Miss Caldwell is ready for you. Marissa's office occupied an entire corner of the floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views. She stood when he entered, moving with less stiffness than she had at the hospital. The bandage was gone from her temple, leaving just a small mark that makeup mostly covered. Victor, she smiled, and it transformed her face from CEO to genuine warmth. How are you settling in? Still trying to convince myself this is real, he admitted. I felt the same way my first day. Here. Of course, back then the building was half this size, and my office was a converted storage closet. She gestured to the chairs by her window. Sit. Let's talk before your schedule gets crazy. They sat, and Marissa pulled out a tablet. I want to be honest with you about something. When I offered you this job, it wasn't just gratitude, though that's certainly part of it. I've been planning this initiative for 18 months, but I couldn't find the right person to lead it. Every candidate was qualified on paper, business degrees, management experience, impressive resumes, but none of them understood what it actually means to protect people, to sacrifice for strangers, to put yourself on the line because it's right, not because it's profitable. She looked at him directly. And you think I understand that? I know you do. I watched you do it. Her expression was earnest. But I'm not going to lie and say this will be easy. You're going to have moments where you feel completely out of your depth, where you question every decision, where you wonder, if I made a mistake choosing you. I'm already there, Victor said quietly. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. Marissa's tone was gentle. But here's what I know that you don't know yet. Character can't be taught. Integrity can't be trained. You either have it or you don't, and you have it, Victor. Everything else, the management skills, the business knowledge, the corporate navigation, those can be learned. Laurel will help you. Damon will help you. I'll help you. You're not alone in this. A knock at the door interrupted them. Damon, the security chief, entered with a serious expression. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The police called. They've identified 2 of the kidnappers from the mall incident. Viktor Sokolov and Wayne Sterling, both with extensive criminal records. They're in custody, but they're not talking. Won't name who hired them. Marissa's jaw tightened. Do the police have any leads on the other 2? Still working on it. They want to interview Mr. Reynolds again, get more details now that he's had time to process everything. Victor felt a chill run down his spine. Do they think they're still a threat? We're not taking any chances, Damon said. I've assigned a security detail to you and your son until this is fully resolved. Discreet, but present. Wait, Tyler. You think my son could be in danger? Marissa reached out and touched his arm gently. We don't know anything for certain, but you're a witness who can identify the kidnappers. That makes you valuable to the investigation and potentially a liability to whoever hired them. I won't take risks with you or Tyler's safety. The fear that had been lurking at the edges of Victor's mind suddenly roared to life. He'd been so focused on the job opportunity and the changes to his life that he hadn't fully processed the danger he might have put himself and Tyler in. What do I do? His voice came out rougher than he intended. "You let us protect you," Marissa said firmly. "Damon's team is the best. They'll keep you and Tyler safe while the police work to resolve this. In the meantime, you focus on your job and building something good from something terrible." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and introductions. Victor met with department heads who ranged from genuinely welcoming to politely skeptical. He could feel their doubt, their questions about whether this janitor turned executive was really qualified to manage a major corporate initiative. At lunch, seated at a conference table with 7 other executives, a man named Keith Winslow, VP of Operations, asked the question Victor knew was coming. "So Mr. Reynolds, tell us about your background in nonprofit management." "I don't have one," Victor said honestly. "I have a background in showing up and doing the work that needs doing. And looking out for people who need looking out for, Ms. Caldwell seems to think that's what this initiative needs." "With all due respect," said a woman named Corinne Wallace, Director of Community Relations, "running a multi-million-dollar initiative requires more than good intentions. It requires strategy, budgeting, stakeholder management. All of which you'll learn," Marissa interjected smoothly. She joined them halfway through the meal. "And all of which are meaningless without the right foundation. Victor understands the communities we're trying to serve because he's lived in them. He understands the stakes because he's risked everything to protect strangers. That's not something you can teach in business school." Keith started to protest, but Marissa held up a hand. "Keith, do you remember why you joined this company? You told me in your interview that you wanted to work somewhere that made a difference, that actually helped people instead of just maximizing profits. That's exactly what Victor is here to do. Give him a chance to prove himself before you dismiss him." The room fell silent. Victor could feel eyes on him, measuring, judging, waiting to see if he'd crack under the pressure. "I know I have a lot to learn," Victor said, looking around the table. "And I'm not going to pretend I know everything about running an initiative or managing budgets or whatever else this job requires. But I do know what it's like to worry about keeping the lights on. I know what it's like to live in neighborhoods where people are scared to let their kids play outside. I know what it's like to see someone in trouble and have to decide in a split second whether you're the kind of person who helps or the kind who looks away." He paused. "Ms. Caldwell is betting that my experience is valuable. I'm going to prove her right. But I can't do it alone. I need help from people who know this world. So I'm not asking you to believe in me yet. I'm just asking you to give me the chance to earn it." 3 weeks into his new position, Victor was beginning to feel like he might actually survive in this world. He'd approved 6 community grants, declined 3 that didn't meet the initiative's criteria, and scheduled site visits to 4 different neighborhoods. Laurel had become his lifeline, appearing at his office door whenever he looked particularly lost to offer guidance or connect him with someone who could help. Tyler had adjusted surprisingly well to their new routine. Victor was home for dinner every night now, able to help with homework and hear about school without the constant pressure of rushing off to a second shift. They'd even managed a weekend trip to the Science Museum, something they'd never been able to afford before. The security detail Damon had assigned followed at a discreet distance. 2 professionals who rotated shifts to keep watch over Victor and Tyler without being intrusive. Victor had grown accustomed to their presence, though it was a constant reminder that the danger hadn't fully passed. The police investigation had stalled. 2 kidnappers in custody, 2 still at large, and nobody talking about who had orchestrated the attack. Detective Holloway called weekly with updates that mostly consisted of "still working on it," and these things take time. Victor tried not to think about it too much, focusing instead on the work that was finally starting to make sense. He discovered he was actually good at connecting with community leaders, at understanding their needs and concerns in ways that corporate executives often missed. His lack of business school polish turned out to be an advantage. When talking to neighborhood watch coordinators and youth program directors, who were tired of suits who didn't understand their reality, on a Thursday afternoon in early December, Victor was reviewing budget proposals when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Reynolds?" The voice was male, cold, with an accent Victor couldn't quite place. "We need to talk about your future." Victor's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "Someone who's very disappointed that you interfered in business that didn't concern you. Ms. Caldwell should have been ours. You cost us a substantial payday. If you're trying to threaten me, you should know I'm recording this call, and the police will." "But police have 2 of my men," the voice interrupted. "But they don't have me. And they don't have the information I have about your son. Tyler, right? 8 years old, attends Brookside Elementary, gets picked up every afternoon by your neighbor, Miss Fields." Victor's vision went white with fear and rage. "If you touch my son, you'll what?" "You got lucky once, Mr. Reynolds. You caught my team off guard. But luck runs out. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to convince Miss Caldwell to drop her cooperation with the police investigation. You're going to ensure that my associates currently in custody are released due to lack of evidence. And you're going to forget everything you saw that day at the mall." "That's insane. I can't do any of that. Even if I wanted to, then your son pays the price. We know where he goes to school. We know his route home. We know he likes to play in the park on Saturdays. It would be very easy for something unfortunate to happen. An accident. Kids are so vulnerable." The line went dead. Victor sat frozen for a moment, the phone still pressed to his ear, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might explode. Then he was moving, grabbing his jacket, running for the door. Laurel looked up in surprise as he rushed past. "Mr. Reynolds, your 2 o'clock meeting, cancel it. Family emergency." He was already at the elevator, stabbing the button repeatedly. He called Joanna as he ran to his car. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Victor, what's wrong? Is Tyler with you? Is he safe?" "He's right here doing his homework." "What happened?" "Lock the doors. Don't let of your sight. I'm calling the police and Damon. Just keep him safe until I get there." He could hear the fear in her voice. "Victor, you're scaring me. What's going on? Just please, Joanna. Lock the doors. I'll explain everything when I get there." His next call was to Damon, who answered immediately. "We have a problem," Victor said, his voice shaking. "I just got a call. They threatened Tyler. They know where he goes to school, where he plays, everything. They want me to interfere with the investigation or they'll hurt him." "Where are you now?" "Heading to my apartment. Tyler's with my neighbor. I'm sending a team there immediately. Don't go inside until they arrive and clear the location. These people are professionals, Victor. They might be watching, waiting for you to lead them right to your son." The thought made Victor feel sick. He pulled over 2 blocks from his building, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. 10 minutes later, 3 black SUVs arrived. Damon emerged from the first one, moving with controlled urgency. "My team is sweeping your building and the neighbor's apartment now," he said. "We'll make sure it's secure before you go in." "Did you record the call?" "No, I didn't think to. It all happened so fast." "That's okay. We can work with your cell provider to trace it, though it was probably a burner phone." Damon's expression was grim. "This changes things. These people are escalating. They're desperate, which makes them more dangerous." Victor's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It contained a photo taken that morning of Tyler walking into school, his backpack bouncing on his shoulders, completely unaware. He was being photographed. The message below the photo read, "We're closer than you think." Victor showed Damon, whose jaw tightened. "We need to move you and Tyler immediately. Somewhere secure, somewhere they can't find you." "For how long?" "Until the police catch these people or neutralize the threat. Days, weeks, I can't give you a timeline. I can't just uproot Tyler's life. He has school, friends, routines. He's been through enough upheaval already with his mother leaving, and now all these changes. I can't traumatize him more by making him hide. Damon's expression softened slightly. I understand, I have kids too. But right now, Tyler's safety has to come first. Everything else is secondary. One of Damon's team members approached. Building is clear, no signs of surveillance or threats. But we did find this on the neighbor's door. He held up a small envelope with Mr. Reynolds written on it in neat handwriting. Victor opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 words, "Time is running out." "That's it," Damon said firmly. "We're relocating you both tonight. No arguments." An hour later, Victor sat in Joanna's living room, explaining to a terrified Tyler why they had to leave immediately, why they couldn't go back to their apartment to pack properly, why strange men in suits were going to drive them somewhere safe. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "But what about school? What about my friends? What about my toys? We'll get your toys later, buddy. And you won't miss much school. This is just temporary. Just until the police catch some bad people." "The bad people from the mall?" "The ones you fought?" Victor pulled his son close. "Yeah, those bad people. But I promise you, Tyler, I will keep you safe. No matter what it takes, I will protect you." Marissa arrived 20 minutes later, her face pale with worry. She'd been in a board meeting when Damon had called her. "Victor, I'm so sorry," she said. "This is my fault. You got involved in my danger. And now it's threatening your son. You didn't ask me to help. I made that choice. And I'm grateful every day that you did. But now I'm going to make sure you and Tyler are protected." She crouched down to Tyler's level. "Hi, Tyler. I'm Marissa. You don't know me, but your dad saved my life, which makes you very special to me. We're going to make sure you're safe, okay?" Tyler looked at her with wide, scared eyes. "Are you the lady my dad saved at the mall?" "I am. My dad's a hero. The biggest hero I know." Marissa's voice was thick with emotion. "And heroes deserve to be protected too. So we're going to take you and your dad somewhere very safe until this is all over. It might seem scary, but I promise you'll be okay. We'll make sure you can still do your schoolwork, and we'll bring your toys, and your dad will be with you the whole time. Can Miss Joanna come too? Come too?" Joanna, who'd been standing nearby trying not to cry, knelt down beside Marissa. "I'm going to stay here and make sure your apartment is taken care of, sweetie. But I'll visit you, I promise. And this will be over before you know it." They left. In a convoy of 3 vehicles, Damon's team taking elaborate precautions to make sure they weren't followed. Victor held Tyler in the back seat, feeling his son's small body trembling against his chest. This was supposed to be better. The new job, the better life, the chance to give Tyler everything he deserved. Instead, Victor had brought danger right to his son's door. As they drove through the darkening city toward an undisclosed safe location, Victor made a silent promise. He would keep Tyler safe, no matter what it cost. And when this was over, he would make sure the people who'd threatened his son paid for every moment of fear they'd caused. Because Victor Reynolds might be new to the corporate world, might be learning how to be an executive and a director and all the things his new job required, but he'd been a father for 8 years. And there was nothing more dangerous than a father protecting his son. The safe house was a fortified property 30 miles outside the city, hidden behind gates and security measures that belonged in a spy movie. Victor carried a sleeping Tyler inside, the exhaustion and fear finally catching up with his son. The interior was comfortable but sterile, the kind of place designed for temporary refuge rather than actual living. Damon's team did a final sweep while Victor tucked Tyler into one of the bedrooms upstairs. His son barely stirred, emotionally drained from the sudden upheaval of their lives. "You're safe here," Victor whispered. though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince, Tyler or himself. "I promise, buddy, you're safe." Downstairs, Marissa was on the phone with Detective Holloway, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Two of your suspects are in custody, and you still can't identify who hired them. These people just threatened a child, Detective. An 8-year-old boy. This needs to end now." Victor descended the stairs slowly, his entire body feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The adrenaline that had carried him through the past few hours was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion mixed with fear and rage. Marissa ended her call and turned to him, her expression softening. "How is he?" "Asleep, scared but safe." Victor sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "This is my fault. I should have stayed out of it that day. Should have called security and let them handle it. Instead, I played hero, and now my son is paying the price. Don't." Marissa sat beside him, her voice firm. "Don't you dare blame yourself for doing the right thing. Those men chose to threaten Tyler. They chose violence and intimidation. You chose courage. There's no moral equivalence between those choices. Courage doesn't matter if my son gets hurt because of it. Your son is safe because you're the kind of father who will do anything to protect him. Just like you protected me and Brooke." She placed her hand over his. "We're going to end this, Victor. The police are tracking down leads. Damon's team is the best in the business. And I'm personally putting up $1 million reward for information leading to the arrest of the remaining kidnappers. Someone will talk. Someone always does when enough money is involved." Victor looked up at her, seeing the determination in her eyes, the fierce protectiveness that mirrored his own feelings. "Why are you doing all this? The job, the protection, the reward money. You could have just sent me a check and called it even. Because that night at the mall changed me." Marissa's voice was quiet but intense. "I'd spent 20 years building my company, accumulating wealth and power, convincing myself that success was what mattered. Then 4 men tried to take me from my daughter, and I realized that none of it meant anything. Not the money, not the empire, not the reputation. The only thing that mattered was being there for Brooke, being alive to see her grow up." She took a shaky breath. "And then you appeared. A man making minimum wage who had every reason to protect himself first. But you didn't. You risked everything for strangers. You showed me what real courage looks like, what real goodness looks like. I can't repay that with money, Victor. But I can make sure that your courage doesn't destroy you. That you and Tyler have the protection and support you deserve." Before Victor could respond, his phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He showed it to Damon, who nodded and started a trace program on his tablet. Victor answered on speaker. "What do you want? Have you convinced Miss Caldwell to cooperate yet?" The same cold voice from earlier. "Time is running out, Mr. Reynolds. Every hour you delay is another hour. Your son is at risk." "My son is somewhere." "You can't find him," Victor said, his voice steadier than he felt. "You can't touch him. You can't threaten him. Whatever leverage you thought you had is gone. There are always ways, Mr. Reynolds. Safe houses aren't as safe as you think. Money buys information. People talk. We'll find him. Then you'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, after what I did to your men at the mall, you don't want that fight." The caller laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Brave words from a janitor playing executive. "You have 48 hours to make the right choice. After that, we stop being polite." The line went dead. Damon looked up from his tablet, frustration clear on his face. Burner phone, routed through 3 different towers. Impossible to trace in the time we had. 48 hours, Victor said. They're escalating. Getting desperate. Which makes them more dangerous but also more likely to make mistakes. Damon stood, his expression grim. "I'm doubling security here and coordinating with Detective Holloway to intensify the investigation. Nobody gets in or out without going through my team. Over the next 2 days, The safe house became both sanctuary and prison. Victor tried to maintain some normalcy for Tyler, helping him with schoolwork that Laurel had arranged to have delivered, playing games, watching movies, but the fear lurked. At the edges of every moment, the knowledge that somewhere out there, people wanted to hurt his son to punish Victor for doing the right thing. Marissa visited daily, often bringing Brooke, whose friendship helped Tyler feel less isolated. The two kids would play in the safe house's secured backyard while the adults strategized inside. The police have a new lead, Marissa told Victor on the second evening. One of the arrested kidnappers, Wayne Sterling, is willing to talk in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's naming names, providing details about who hired them. Who was it? A man named Roland Matthews. He's a business rival of mine who lost a major contract to Caldwell Industries 6 months ago. Apparently, he decided kidnapping was an appropriate response to losing a business deal. Victor felt sick. All of this, the kidnapping, the threats against Tyler, it's over a business contract? It's over ego and greed, and a man who can't accept that he lost fairly. Marissa's expression was hard. But he's about to lose much more. The FBI is involved now. They're tracking Matthews' financial records, communications, everything. It's only a matter of time before they have enough to arrest him and the remaining kidnappers. How much time? The deadline they gave me is tonight at midnight. I know, Damon's team is on high alert. We're ready for anything. Midnight came and went with no contact from the kidnappers. Victor sat in the safe house living room, watching. The clock, his body tense and ready for violence that never came. At 2 a.m, Damon received a call. He listened intently, then looked at Victor and Marissa with something approaching a smile. They got him. FBI raided Matthews' estate an hour ago. They found the remaining 2 kidnappers hiding there, along with evidence linking Matthews to the entire operation. It's over. They're all in custody. Victor felt his knees go weak with relief. It's really over? Tyler's safe. He's safe. You're both safe. The threat is eliminated. Victor buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the release of tension he'd been holding for days. He felt Marissa's arms wrap around him, felt her holding him while he processed the overwhelming relief of knowing his son was finally truly safe. You did it, she whispered. You protected him. You kept him safe. We did it, Victor corrected, pulling back to look at her. I couldn't have survived this without you. The protection, the resources, the support. You saved us just as much as I saved you. Their faces were close. Close enough that Victor could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, could feel her breath on his skin. The moment stretched between them, loaded with everything they'd been through together, everything they'd come to mean to each other. Damon cleared his throat diplomatically. I'll give you two some privacy. I need to coordinate with the FBI anyway. After he left, Marissa and Victor sat together on the couch, the silence comfortable and charged all at once. I've been thinking about something, Marissa said quietly. About what happens now. The threat is over, but I don't want you and Tyler to go back to that apartment. I want you to stay at my estate. There's a guest house that's larger than most people's homes. Tyler would have space to play. You'd have security and peace of mind. And I'd have the chance to know you both better. Marissa, that's too much. We can't impose. It's not imposing if I'm asking, almost begging actually. She took his hand. These past few weeks, working with you, watching you be an amazing father and a dedicated professional despite everything you've been dealing with, I've realized something. You're not just the man who saved my life. You're someone I want in my life. Someone I care about beyond gratitude or professional respect. Victor's heart was hammering. I care about you too. More than I probably should, considering you're my boss and we come from completely different worlds. Then maybe it's time we stop pretending those things matter more than what we feel. Marissa's voice was soft but certain. I'm not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that maybe we saved each other for a reason. That maybe this connection we've built is worth exploring." Victor looked at this extraordinary woman who'd seen something valuable in him when the world had looked right past him, who'd given him not just a job but a purpose, who'd protected his son as fiercely as she protected her own daughter. "Lied like that," he said, "to explore this, to see where it goes. As long as Tyler comes first, always." "Always," Marissa agreed. "I wouldn't respect you if he didn't." And there, in a safe house at 3 a.m, with the danger finally past, Victor Reynolds made another brave choice. He leaned in and kissed Marissa Caldwell, gentle and tentative and full of promise. The following week brought a flurry of activity that left Victor's head spinning in the best possible way. Roland Matthews and all 4 kidnappers were formally charged with attempted kidnapping, conspiracy, and making terrorist threats. The evidence was overwhelming, the case airtight. Detective Holloway assured Victor that all 5 men would be facing substantial prison time. The media coverage was intense but mostly positive. Janitor turned executive save CEO, brings down criminal network, read one headline. Victor gave exactly 1 interview to a local reporter who agreed to keep Tyler's face and identifying details out of the story. "I just did what anyone should do when someone needs help," Victor told the camera, the words now familiar but still true. "The real story isn't about me being a hero. It's about what happens when people choose courage over comfort, when they step up instead of looking away." The interview aired on a Thursday evening. By Friday morning, Victor's office phone was ringing constantly with people wanting to share their own stories, to volunteer for the Community Safety Initiative, to donate money or time or expertise. Laurel appeared at his door with a knowing smile. "You've inspired people, Mr. Reynolds. They see themselves in you. They want to be part of what you're building." And Victor was building something remarkable. With the criminal threat eliminated, he threw himself fully into his work. The initiative expanded rapidly, funding programs in 12 cities, training over 300 volunteers, partnering with police departments to improve community relations. He discovered talents he hadn't known he possessed. Public speaking became easier with practice. Budget management made sense once Laurel explained it in practical terms. Strategic planning was just problem solving on a larger scale, something he'd been doing his whole life to survive on limited resources. The department heads who'd been skeptical at first gradually came around. Keith Winslow actually apologized during a staff meeting, admitting he'd underestimated Victor's capabilities. Corinne Wallace became one of his strongest allies, connecting him with community leaders and helping navigate the political complexities of urban safety initiatives. But the biggest change was happening outside the office. True to her word, Marissa had invited Victor and Tyler to stay at her estate while they looked for a permanent home. The guest house was indeed larger than their old apartment, with 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and a living room that overlooked gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Tyler had adjusted with the resilience of youth, making friends with Brooke and spending hours exploring the grounds. The 2 kids were close in age and had bonded over their shared experience of having single parents who'd survived something traumatic together. Victor and Marissa had been taking things slowly, mindful of their children and the professional complications. They had dinner together most evenings, the 4 of them becoming an unlikely family unit. Marissa would help Tyler with math homework while Victor listened to Brooke practice her piano. They'd watch movies in the main house's theater room, Tyler and Brooke eventually falling asleep on the couch while the adults talked quietly about everything and nothing. One Saturday afternoon, 6 weeks after the kidnapping, Marissa found Victor in the guest house living room reviewing grant applications. "You know it's the weekend, right?" she said, settling onto the couch beside him. "You're allowed to stop working," says the woman who was answering emails at 6 this morning. "Fair point." She smiled. Brooke and Tyler are at the stables with the writing instructor. We have the place to ourselves for a few hours. Victor set aside his laptop, giving her his full attention. That sounds suspiciously like you planned this. Maybe I did. Marissa's expression grew more serious. I wanted to talk to you about something. About us, specifically. Victor's heart rate picked up. Okay, we've been dancing around this for weeks. Being careful, taking it slow, which I understand and appreciate. But I need you to know where I stand. She took his hand. I'm falling in love with you, Victor. With your integrity and your courage and the way you love your son. With how hard you work and how much you care about making a real difference. With the way you see me as Marissa, not as a CEO or a business opportunity, but as a person. Victor felt his chest tighten with emotion. I'm falling in love with you too. I have been since you first visited me in that hospital room. But I've been scared to say it, scared that I'm not enough, that I come from a world too different from yours, that eventually you'll realize you made a mistake. The only mistake would be letting fear keep us from something real. Marissa moved closer. I don't care that you didn't go to business school. I don't care that you grew up poor or worked as a janitor. I care that you're genuine and brave and kind, that you make me want to be better. That when I'm with you, I feel like the person I always hoped I could be. You make me feel that way too, Victor said. Like I'm not just surviving anymore. Like I'm actually living. Building something that matters with someone who matters. They kissed then, deeper than before, without the hesitation that had marked their earlier attempts. This was a kiss full of certainty and promise, and the knowledge that what they'd built together was worth protecting. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Marissa rested her forehead against his. I want this, she whispered. I want us. But I need to know you want it too. That you're ready for what that means. Dating the CEO, dealing with public attention, navigating the complications of blending our families. I want it, Victor said firmly. All of it. The complications, the attention, the work it'll take to make this succeed. Because what we have is worth it. You're worth it. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Tyler and Brooke stood there, both trying and failing to hide their grins. Are you two boyfriend and girlfriend now? Tyler asked with the bluntness of an 8-year-old. Victor looked at Marissa, who was trying not to laugh. Would that be okay? With you, buddy? Ms. Marissa is nice. And she makes you smile a lot. And Brooke is my friend. Tyler considered this with serious concentration. Yeah, it's okay with me. Me too, Brooke added, moving to stand beside her mother. I like Mr. Victor. He's brave and funny, and he plays board games without cheating. Well, then, Marissa said, pulling both kids into a hug while reaching out to include Victor. I guess it's official. We're doing this. They stood together, the four of them, an unconventional family built from tragedy and courage, and the choice to open their hearts despite the risk. That evening, they had their first official family dinner, not in the formal dining room but in the guest house kitchen, with Tyler and Brooke helping make pizza from scratch. The kids got flour everywhere, and the pizza ended up slightly lopsided. But it was perfect in its imperfection. After the kids were asleep, Victor and Marissa sat on the guest house porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Thank you, Victor said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For believing in me. For giving Tyler and me a chance at a life I never thought we'd have. He took her hand. 6 weeks ago, I was a janitor working 2 jobs and barely surviving. Now I'm running a major initiative, dating an incredible woman, and watching my son thrive in ways I never imagined possible. It feels like a dream. It's not a dream, Marissa assured him. It's what you earn through your character and courage. You saved my life, Victor, but you also reminded me how to live it, how to focus on what really matters. How to use my resources and influence to actually help people instead of just accumulating more wealth. We saved each other, Victor said. That's what this has always been. Not hero and victim, but two people who needed exactly what the other could give. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, both of them marveling at how quickly life could transform when you made the choice to be brave. Be brave. 3 months after the kidnapping, Caldwell Industries hosted its annual charity gala at the Grand Ballroom downtown. This year, the event was dedicated to celebrating the Community Safety Initiative and the lives it had already touched. Victor stood backstage in a tuxedo that still felt slightly uncomfortable despite Marissa's assurances that he looked perfect. Through the curtain, he could see 500 guests in designer gowns and expensive suits. The city's elite who'd paid $1,000 per plate to support the cause. Nervous? Marissa appeared beside him, stunning in a midnight blue dress. That made her look like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Terrified, Victor admitted. I'm about to give a speech to 500 people who probably think I have no business being here. Then prove them wrong. Tell them your truth. Tell them why this work matters. She straightened his bow tie with gentle fingers. You've already won over the skeptics at the company. You've built a program that's genuinely changing lives. These people need to hear from someone real, someone who actually understands what we're trying to accomplish. Tyler and Brooke were seated at a front table with Joanna and Damon, both kids dressed up and looking impossibly grown up. Tyler caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up that made Victor's heart swell with love and pride. The master of ceremonies was introducing him now. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the man of the hour. 3 months ago he was working 2 jobs to support his son. Today, he's the director of our Community Safety Initiative, a program that's already impacted over 20,000 lives across 12 cities. Please welcome Victor Reynolds. The applause was warm as Victor walked onto the stage. He stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of expectant faces, and felt the familiar flutter of nerves. Then his eyes found Marissa, standing at the side of the stage, and he remembered why he was here. 3 months ago, Victor began, his voice steadier than he felt. I was mopping floors at North Point Galleria when I heard a young girl scream for help. Her mother was being kidnapped by armed men, and in that moment, I had a choice. I could call security and hope they arrived in time, or I could act immediately. I chose to act, not because I was especially brave or trained or prepared, but because I couldn't imagine explaining to my own son why I'd let someone's mother be taken when I could have helped. He paused, letting the words settle. That decision changed my life in ways I never expected. Miss Caldwell didn't just thank me and move on. She saw potential in someone the world had overlooked. She gave me an opportunity I never could have imagined, and then she gave me the resources and support to build something that actually matters. Victor looked directly at Marissa. This initiative exists because one woman decided that wealth should be used to create real change, not just accumulate more wealth. Because she understands that true security doesn't come from walls and guards, but from communities where people look out for each other, where courage and compassion are valued above profit and power. He turned back to the audience. I'm not special. I'm just a father who wanted to help. But what I've learned in these 3 months is that every community has people like me. People who care deeply, who want to make their neighborhood safer, who just need resources and support to act on their courage. That's what this program does. We're not creating heroes. We're empowering the heroes who already exist in every neighborhood, on every block. The applause was building, but Victor wasn't finished. My son is here tonight. Tyler, can you stand up? His 8-year-old stood, looking shy but proud. I brought him because I want him to see that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something, leads to good things. That helping people isn't just morally right. It's the foundation of a life worth living. Victor's voice grew stronger, more passionate. To everyone here tonight, whether you donated money or time or expertise, thank you. You're investing in the belief that we can make our community safer, that we can build a world where people step up instead of looking away. And together, we're proving that one moment of courage can create ripples that change thousands of lives. The standing ovation was immediate and thunderous. People rose to their feet, applause echoing through the ballroom. Victor stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed by the response. Marissa was the first to reach him when he came off stage, pulling him into an embrace that felt like coming home. "You were perfect," she whispered against his ear. "Absolutely. Perfect." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations. Victor met donors who wanted to expand the program to their cities, community leaders who shared success stories from neighborhoods where the initiative had taken root, and countless people who simply wanted to shake his hand and thank him for his courage. Late in the evening, when most guests had departed and only close friends and family remained, Marissa took Victor's hand and led him onto the now empty dance floor. "Dance with me," she said softly. "I should warn you, I'm not very good at this. Neither am I. We'll figure it out together." They swayed to soft music while Tyler and Brooke watched from their table, both kids grinning at the sight of their parents, finally admitting what everyone else had known for months. "I love you," Marissa said, the words simple but weighted with meaning. "I've been afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or too complicated, but I don't want to be afraid anymore. I love you, Victor Reynolds. I love your courage, and your integrity, and the way you love your son. I love that you see me as a person, not a trophy or a business opportunity. I love the life we're building together." Victor felt his eyes sting with emotion. "I love you too. I've probably loved you since you visited me in that hospital room and saw value in someone the world had dismissed. You changed my life, Marissa. Not just with the job and the opportunities, but by showing me that I was worth more than I believed. That I could be more than just a guy working 2 jobs and barely surviving. You were always worth more," Marissa said firmly. "I just helped. You see it." They kissed there on the dance floor, surrounded by the remnants of a celebration honoring work they'd built together, a program born from tragedy and transformed into hope. When they finally pulled apart, Tyler and Brooke had joined them on the dance floor, both kids demanding their turn to dance with the adults. Victor scooped Tyler up, dancing with his son, while Marissa did the same with Brooke, the 4 of them moving in a circle of joy and laughter. This was family, Victor realized. Not the traditional kind he'd once imagined, but something better. Something built on choice and courage and the decision to open their hearts despite the risk. Later that night, after they'd returned to the estate and the kids were asleep, Victor and Marissa sat in the garden, watching the moon rise over the grounds. "Move in with us," Marissa said suddenly. "Not the guest house, the main house. You and Tyler, make this your home, officially." Victor turned to look at her. "Are you sure? That's a big step. I've never been more sure of anything. These past 3 months, having you and Tyler here, it's shown me what I've been missing, what Brooke's been missing. A family, not just 2 separate households coexisting, but an actual family. I want that, Victor. I want us to be official, committed, building the future together. What about the complications? People will talk. They'll say I'm using you for your money, that this is inappropriate. Let them talk. I don't care what people think. I care about you, about Tyler, about Brooke, about the family we're creating. That's all that matters." Victor took her hands in his. "Then yes, we'll move in. We'll build this family together. We'll figure out the complications as they come, because what we have is worth fighting for." They sealed the promise with a kiss under the moonlight. 2 people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way and chosen to build something beautiful. From the chaos. 2 years had passed since that November day at North Point Galleria, when Victor Reynolds had heard 5 words that changed his life forever. "Please save my mom, mister." Standing in the renovated community center in the Westbrook neighborhood, Victor watched volunteers graduate from the latest safety training program and marveled at how much had transformed. The Community Safety Initiative now operated in 43 cities across 6 states, had trained over 5,000 volunteers, and had contributed to a documented 30% reduction in crime in neighborhoods where they'd implemented comprehensive programs. But the numbers, impressive as they were, didn't capture the real impact. Victor saw it in the faces of the people in this room, in the single mothers who'd learned self-defense and community organizing, in the retired veterans who'd found purpose training others, in the teenagers who'd chosen to become neighborhood watch volunteers instead of getting pulled into gangs. This was what mattered. Not the corporate success or the media recognition, but the tangible difference in people's lives. Marissa stood beside him, her hand in his, watching the ceremony with the same pride he felt. They'd been married for 6 months now, a small ceremony, attended only by close friends and family. Tyler had been Victor's best man, and Brooke had served as Marissa's maid of honor, both kids beaming with joy as their parents officially became a family. The transition had been surprisingly smooth. Tyler and Brooke treated each other like biological siblings, complete with the occasional argument and the fierce loyalty that came with shared experiences. They attended the same private school now, one where Tyler's intelligence and curiosity were nurtured instead of overlooked. He'd blossomed academically and socially, no longer the quiet kid worried about whether they could afford lunch, but a confident young man who knew his father loved him and his future was secure. Victor had found his rhythm in the corporate world while never losing sight of where he'd come from. He still visited construction sites and talked with janitors, still understood the reality of living paycheck to paycheck because he'd lived it himself. That perspective made him effective in ways traditional executives couldn't match. When he proposed programs, he understood exactly who they'd serve and what those people needed because he'd been one of them. The initiative had won multiple awards and received national recognition. Victor had been interviewed by major news outlets, profiled in business magazines, and invited to speak at conferences. But his favorite moments were still the small ones, sitting with community leaders in neighborhood centers, listening to their concerns, helping them access resources that could actually make a difference. After the graduation ceremony, as volunteers mingled and celebrated, a young woman approached Victor. She was in her mid-20s, wearing the program's volunteer vest, her expression nervous but determined. "Mr. Reynolds, I wanted to thank you. 6 months ago, I was walking home from my night shift when someone tried to rob me. But I just completed your self-defense training, and I fought back. I got away safely because of what you taught me." Victor felt his chest tighten with emotion. "I'm so glad you're okay. That's exactly why we do this work. It's more than that. Though, after that night, I realized I wanted to help other women feel empowered the way your program empowered me. So I became a volunteer trainer. I've taught 50 women so far." Her eyes shone with pride. "You started something that's creating waves of change. People helping people, courage inspiring more courage. That's your legacy, Mr. Reynolds." After she walked away, Marissa squeezed his hand. "Still think you're just a janitor who got lucky?" Victor smiled. "I'm a janitor who made one brave choice and had the incredible fortune of having someone believe in what that choice represented. Everything that came after, we built together." That evening, the family gathered for dinner at home, the sprawling estate that Victor had finally stopped thinking of as Marissa's house and started thinking of as theirs. Joanna had joined them, as she often did, the woman who'd been Victor's lifeline during his hardest years, now part of their extended family. Tyler and Brooke, now 10 and 11 respectively, chattered about their school day while the adults listened. with the patient attention of parents who genuinely cared about every detail of their lives. "Dad," Tyler said during dessert, "for my school project, I have to write about someone I admire. Can I write about you? About how you saved Ms. Marissa and then built the safety program." Victor's throat tightened. "You can write about anyone you want, buddy, but you should know that I'm not special. I just did what I hope anyone would do. That's what makes you special," Tyler said with the wisdom of a child who'd watched his father transform their lives through courage and hard work. "You don't think you're special. You just help people because it's right." Later that night, after the kids were asleep and Joanna had gone home, Victor and Marissa took their traditional evening walk through the gardens. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet, the sky clear and full of stars. "Do you ever think about that day?" Marissa asked. "Wonder what would have happened if you'd made a different choice?" "Sometimes. But then I look at our life now, at Tyler thriving, at the work we're doing, at the family we've built, and I know I made the right choice. Even with everything it cost, even with the danger and fear, I'd do it all again. So would I, all of it. The kidnapping, the threats, the complications. Because it brought you into my life. It gave me purpose again. It reminded me what really matters." They stopped at their favorite bench, overlooking the pond where Tyler and Brooke still fed ducks on weekends. This had become their spot where they came to talk about difficult decisions, to celebrate victories, to simply be together away from the demands of work and parenting. "I've been thinking," Marissa said, "about expanding the initiative internationally, starting with 3 pilot cities in other countries, testing whether our model works across different cultures and contexts. That's ambitious and expensive. We have the resources, and more importantly, we have the expertise. You've built something truly special, Victor. Something that deserves to reach as many people as possible." Victor considered this. 2 years ago, he'd been terrified of running a single program in one city. Now they were discussing international expansion, and instead of fear, he felt excitement. "Let's do it," he said. "Let's see how far we can take this, how many lives we can touch." "That's my fearless husband," Marissa said with a smile. Still running toward challenges instead of away from them. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the moon's reflection ripple across the pond. 2 people from different worlds who'd found each other in a moment of crisis and chosen to build something beautiful together on weekends. Victor sometimes drove past North Point Galleria, past the spot where everything had changed. The mall looked the same, shoppers coming and going, life continuing its normal rhythm. But Victor was different. His whole world was different. He'd stopped being invisible. Not because of wealth or status or recognition, but because he'd chosen courage in a moment that mattered. And that courage had created ripples that touched thousands of lives, inspired countless people, and built a legacy that would outlast him. The young janitor pushing a cart through those hallways, struggling to make rent and worrying about his son's future. That version of Victor felt like a different person now, but in important ways, he was exactly the same. Still the man who showed up and did the work. Still the father who'd do anything for his son. Still the person who believed that helping others mattered more than helping yourself. He'd just been given the resources and platform to act on those beliefs in ways he'd never imagined possible. 3 years after that rainy November day, Victor Reynolds stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., accepting a national award for community safety innovation. Beside him stood Marissa, Tyler, and Brooke, his family in every way that mattered. As cameras flashed and the audience applauded, Victor thought about the question Tyler had asked all those years ago. "Are you still a hero at your new job?" The answer was both yes and no. He was still the same person who'd run toward danger to help strangers. But he'd learned that heroism wasn't just about dramatic moments of courage. It was about showing up every day and doing the work. About using whatever resources you had, whether minimum wage or millions of dollars, to make the world a little bit better. It was about seeing someone in trouble and choosing to help, even when it cost you everything. Because sometimes when you run toward danger to save a stranger, you end up saving yourself. And sometimes, the 5 words that change your life forever aren't "I love you" or "you got the job." Sometimes they're simply, "Please save my mom, mister." And everything that follows is just the courage to say yes. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.